I knew something was wrong the moment Malik's little hand gripped mine like a vice. We were sitting at table 8 in the Harbor Light Hotel ballroom, right under the golden chandeliers, when he froze mid-play with his red toy car. His big brown eyes stared into mine, silent, pleading, and then he whispered so low I almost didn't catch it. "Grandma Zora, can we go home? Right now?" The music didn't stop. The jazz band kept blowing that lazy, sweet tune, and the waiters floated by like nothing had happened, but my stomach turned to ice. I bent down, pulled up the edge of the linen tablecloth, and that's when I saw it. A folded piece of paper lying in the dark space under the table. My heart thudded. I reached down with shaking fingers, unfolded it, and read the words that made the room spin. Table 8. Add shrimp to the child's plate. Shrimp. My Malik is deathly allergic to shrimp. We carry an EpiPen everywhere we go. Church picnics, school lunches, even Sunday dinner at Auntie Nettie's. One bite could close his throat in minutes. I looked around. People were laughing, drinking champagne, toasting to love. The bride, Savannah, stood across the room glowing like a magazine cover, holding a crystal glass and smiling wide. Darius, my son, was busy making rounds, proud as he could be. And there I was, holding this piece of paper like a death warrant. I could feel Malik trembling beside me. My baby didn't take his eyes off me, as if waiting for me to save him. The scent of garlic butter shrimp from the appetizer tray drifted over, and suddenly it was too much. The candles, the silver plates, the sound of laughter. I straightened up and pressed the note flat against the tablecloth, as if pinning down a snake. Lord, give me strength. I wasn't about to let my grandson become a casualty at his daddy's wedding. I tucked the note into my purse, turned to Malik, and kissed his forehead. "Stay close to Aunt Keisha," I told him, my voice steady, even though my heart was knocking. Then I stood up, smoothed my dress, and walked out of that ballroom like a woman on a mission. Whatever game somebody was playing tonight, it ended now. I've been raising Malik since the day Naomi passed. He was just 4 then, small enough to sit on my hip, big enough to ask me over and over, "Grandma Zora, when's Mama coming home?" Back then, my house on Sugar Row smelled like cornbread and lavender detergent. I'd rock him on the porch swing, singing the same hymn my own grandma used to hum, "His eye is on the sparrow," until his little body went slack against mine, and the tears dried on his cheeks. Every morning, we had a ritual. I'd pack his lunch, peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, no seafood anywhere, and slip a sticky note inside with a goofy doodle. "You're braver than the bullies," one said. Another had a little superhero Malik with a cape. When he came home from school, he'd stick those notes on the fridge door like trophies. Even on hard days, he'd make me laugh, like the time he tried to fix the broken toaster with a toy hammer, looking so serious I almost cried from trying not to laugh. Or how he'd crawl under the kitchen table when he didn't want to eat his vegetables, exactly where he was sitting tonight, clutching my hand. Naomi used to say Malik was her little sunbeam, always running through the house making noise, turning any room into a playground. When the accident took her, the house went too quiet. Darius threw himself into work and stopped coming home for dinner, but I couldn't let Malik feel abandoned. We built our own little world, just the 2 of us. Saturday mornings, we'd walk down to Auntie Nettie's diner, share a plate of pancakes, and wave at everybody we knew. The whole block looked out for him. Mr. Earl from the barber shop, Miss Laverne from the church choir. Malik became everybody's boy, not just mine. And I became his safe place, the one who carried the EpiPen, who read every ingredient label twice, who stayed up through the night when a rash broke out from a mystery snack at school. Darius looked handsome tonight in his navy suit, smiling like he hadn't in years. Seeing him happy should have warmed my heart, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a small knot in my chest. Savannah Hale was the reason for that knot. The first time Darius brought her to Sugar Row, she stepped into my kitchen in a silk dress and heels that didn't quite belong on our creaky wooden floorboards. She smiled pretty, complimented my sweet tea, but her eyes slid over the family photos on the wall, especially the one of Naomi holding baby Malik, with something I couldn't name. "She's good for him, Mama," Darius said later, like he'd read my thoughts. "Helps me laugh again." I nodded, because what Mama doesn't want to see her son laugh. But even then, I caught Malik hiding behind my skirt that whole night, peeking out at Savannah as if she were a stranger knocking on his door. Keisha noticed it too. My girl's been with me since she was 12, when I took her in after her mama passed. Now she's 23, a steady presence in the house, tutoring Malik after school, taking him to the park when I need to work. She loves that boy, like he's her own little brother. She told me once, "Miss Zora, he gets quiet when she's around, real quiet." And she was right. Every visit Savannah made to the house, Malik would clam up, keeping his toy car clutched in one hand like a shield. Savannah would crouch down, try to charm him with candy or new sneakers. But there was always a stiffness to her smile, like she was playing a role she didn't quite believe in. I told myself I was being too hard on her. Maybe it was just my grief talking, or the old neighborhood whispering that Darius was moving too fast. But then little things started to pile up. Savannah insisted on planning every detail of the wedding by herself, down to the menu, even though she knew Malik's allergy could be deadly. She waved off my concern with a laugh. "Don't worry, Miss Zora. I've got it handled." I tried to believe her. But tonight, as I sat at that glittering table, looking at Malik's pale face after finding that note, the knot in my chest pulled tight. Something wasn't right, and deep down, I knew. This was more than a mistake. Savannah's perfect smile across the room felt like a curtain hiding something sharp behind it. That's why tonight, when he squeezed my hand under the white tablecloth, I knew this wasn't just a child's whim. My boy doesn't scare easy. If Malik said he wanted to leave, there was a reason. He trusts me to keep him safe. And Lord help whoever tried to harm him, because I have weathered storms before, and I'm still standing. The moment the main course trays started coming out, Malik's little car rolled off the edge of the table and clattered to the floor. He ducked under the table to grab it, and when he came back up, his face had changed. "Grandma Zora," his voice shook like a leaf in the wind. "We gotta go." I leaned closer. "What is it, baby?" He didn't answer, just stared at me with those wide, wet eyes. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I bent down, lifted the white tablecloth, and there it was, lying in the shadows by his chair, a folded piece of paper. I reached for it with hands that didn't feel like mine. When I opened it, I felt every muscle in my body lock up. Table 8. Add shrimp to the child's plate. It wasn't a request. It was an order. I glanced around the ballroom. Laughter, music, the clink of wine glasses. The bride was across the room, raising her glass in a perfect toast. Darius was laughing with his coworkers. None of them knew that sitting at this table was a note that could kill my grandson. My throat went dry. I thought about Naomi, about that rainy afternoon when we buried her, how I swore to her picture later that night that I'd take care of Malik no matter what. That promise rang loud in my ears now. Keisha, sitting on my left, saw my face go pale. "Miss Zora, what's wrong?" I folded the paper, slid it into my purse, and said quietly, "Watch Malik for me." I kissed the top of his head. His curls were damp with sweat, his small shoulders tense. "I got you, baby," I whispered. Then I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked out of that ballroom with the kind of calm that only comes when anger burns hotter than fear. In the hallway, the air felt cooler, but my mind was boiling. Who would write such a thing? Why tonight? And then, like a puzzle snapping into place, I thought of the life insurance papers Darius had just signed last month. The new policy Savannah insisted on, just in case. My stomach nodded. This wasn't just a cruel prank. This felt like a plan. I spotted one of the waiters by the bar, a young man I'd seen delivering our appetizers. My heels clicked sharp on the tile as I marched toward him. "Who gave you this?" I asked, shoving the note toward him. His eyes widened, color draining from his face. And just like that, I knew I was about to uncover something that could tear this whole wedding apart. I walked out of the ballroom and into the hallway, my heels striking the polished floor in a rhythm that matched the pounding in my chest. The air outside was cooler, but it didn't calm the storm boiling inside me. Malik's terrified eyes and that folded piece of paper were still burning in my mind. Near the bar stood Marcus, the young server who had brought out our appetizers earlier. His clean white jacket looked suddenly too crisp, too bright under the hallway lights. He laughed at something one of the other servers said, but when he turned and saw me, his smile faded. "Marcus," I said, holding up the paper between two fingers like evidence in a courtroom. My voice was low, steady, but sharp enough to cut glass. "You dropped this." His face drained of color. "Ma'am, You know what this is?" I stepped closer until I could see the nervous twitch in his jaw. This note could have killed my grandson. He swallowed hard, glanced toward the ballroom as if looking for an escape. I could see his hands start to shake. For a moment, I thought he might run, but I blocked his path with nothing but my stare. I didn't write it," he stammered finally. "A lady gave it to me. She said to pass it to the chef." "What lady?" My voice rose slightly, enough to make another waiter glance our way. Marcus looked down at the floor, as though the answer might be hiding in the tiles. She was wearing a wine-colored dress. Fancy jewelry. Told me to keep quiet, that it was a special request. I felt my breath catch. There were only a few women in the reception wearing that shade tonight, and one of them was seated at the family table, laughing like nothing in the world was wrong. I lowered the paper slowly, my jaw set. "Thank you, Marcus," I said, my voice softer now but edged with steel. "You did the right thing telling me." But inside, I knew this was only the beginning. Someone had tried to turn this wedding into a funeral, and I wasn't about to let them succeed. Marcus glanced over his shoulder again, as if afraid someone might see him talking to me. "Please, Ms. Carter," he said in a hushed voice. "I can't lose this job. I've got 2 kids at home." I softened just enough to let him breathe, but I kept my voice firm. Then help me make sure my grandson makes it home alive tonight. Tell me everything you remember." He hesitated, then closed his eyes as though replaying the moment. She had on a wine-colored dress, like I said, dark red stones on her earrings, and a big ring, square cut, maybe a garnet. She kept playing with it when she talked. And her perfume, strong, like jasmine, could smell it even after she walked away. Each detail fell into place like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. My stomach twisted. I had seen that ring earlier, when Savannah lifted her champagne glass for a toast. Marcus lowered his voice even more. She told me, "Make sure the kid's plate is special." Said it like she was doing something nice. But then she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't tell anyone I asked." Gave me $20 cash. I thought it was just an extra appetizer or something. I clenched the paper in my hand until it crumpled. "You did fine, Marcus, but you understand now why this can't stay quiet." He nodded quickly, guilt shadowing his young face. "I swear, I didn't know about the allergy. I got kids too, ma'am. I wouldn't risk a child's life." I believed him. His fear felt real, but so did mine. This wasn't just careless mischief. This was intent. Someone had planned to harm Malik, and now I had my first concrete link. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and looked back toward the glowing ballroom. The jazz music drifted out faintly, but it no longer sounded warm. It sounded like a countdown. "Stay near me," I told Marcus. "I may need you to repeat this in front of everyone." His eyes widened, but he nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Inside, my resolve hardened. This wedding wasn't over. Not until the truth stood in the center of that ballroom for all to see. As Marcus finished speaking, a sharp voice sliced through the hallway. "Marcus, what's going on here?" The banquet manager, a tall man in a black suit with a clipboard in hand, strode toward us. His eyes darted from Marcus's pale face to the crumpled paper in my fist. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked, his tone polite but tight. Before Marcus could answer, I stepped forward. "No, everything is not all right. This note was meant to poison my grandson's plate. Marcus is helping me figure out who gave it to him." The manager's expression flickered. Surprise, then discomfort, then a forced smile. "I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding." He turned to Marcus. "Isn't that right?" Marcus froze, his throat bobbing as he swallowed. I could almost feel him slipping away, retreating into silence. The fear of losing his job was written all over his face. "Marcus," I said, my voice sharp enough to hold him still. "Look at me, not him. This is about a child's life. You've got children. How would you feel if someone tried to harm them?" His eyes met mine, and I saw the conflict play out inside him. Finally, he squared his shoulders and said, loud enough for the manager to hear, "It was Savannah, the lady in the wine-colored dress. She gave me the note." The manager's jaw tightened. "Marcus." "No," I cut him off. "Don't try to intimidate him. You should be calling security, not covering for anyone." The tension in the hallway thickened until it felt hard to breathe. Marcus's hands shook, but he stood his ground. The manager muttered something under his breath and stepped back, clearly more concerned with avoiding scandal than protecting a child. I put my hand gently on Marcus's arm. "You did the right thing," I told him, though my own heart was hammering like a war drum. Inside, I felt the shift. This was no longer a quiet suspicion. Now it was war. Whoever had orchestrated this had crossed a line, and I was done playing polite. I glanced toward the ballroom doors glowing with soft golden light. My next step was clear. Go back inside and drag the truth out into the open. I stood there in the hallway, still gripping the paper so tightly the edges cut into my palm. The buzz of conversation and music floated through the ballroom doors, suddenly sounding cruelly cheerful. For a split second, I thought about taking Malik and slipping out quietly, vanishing into the night, letting this whole family drama burn itself out without us. But then I pictured Malik's face, pale and frightened, clutching my hand under that table. If I left now, the woman who tried to harm him would still be laughing over champagne, free to try again. No, that wasn't going to happen. I turned to Marcus one last time. Stay close, but keep your distance until I call for you. I may need you to tell this room exactly what you told me. He nodded nervously, wiping his hands on his apron. Yes, ma'am. I'll be ready. As I walked back toward the ballroom, Keisha appeared from around the corner. She had that sixth sense of hers, always knowing when something was wrong. What happened? She whispered, eyes darting between my face and the paper in my hand. I told her quickly, my voice low but sharp. Her expression hardened, and she reached for my free hand. Then we don't run, she said. We stand. That was all I needed. Her words anchored me. I straightened my shoulders, smoothed the front of my dress, and pushed open the double doors. The room was still glowing with warm candlelight, the clink of glasses and laughter rolling like waves. But in my chest, a storm was gathering. Tonight, this wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a courtroom, and I was about to call the first witness. The music faded as I stepped fully into the ballroom. It wasn't the band stopping. It was me, standing there so still, so deliberate, that it pulled the air right out of the room. Conversations stuttered and died down, like candles blown out one by one. I walked to the center of the floor, heels clicking against the marble, and felt every eye on me. My fingers gripped the folded notes so tightly it was damp. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying above the clinking glasses and rustling dresses. "Before anyone touches their dinner, there's something that needs to be said." The room went silent. Marcus appeared in the doorway, nervous but ready, like we'd agreed. Keisha sat up straighter at our table, her arm protectively around Malik. I held the note high. This was found under our table. It instructed the kitchen to add shrimp to my grandson's plate. A child with a severe, documented shellfish allergy. A ripple of gasps spread across the room. Somewhere in the back, a fork clattered to the floor. "I'm asking, right here, and right now," I said, my voice shaking but strong. "Who gave this order? Who tried to turn this wedding into a funeral?" All eyes turned to Savannah, still radiant in her wine-colored dress, a perfect smile frozen on her face. She tilted her head and let out a soft laugh that sounded like glass cracking. "That's absurd," she said sweetly. "Why would anyone do such a thing?" Marcus stepped forward then, clearing his throat. "I got that note from her," he said, pointing directly at Savannah. "She paid me cash to give it to the chef." The room erupted. Whispers, gasps, chairs scraping against the floor. Savannah's face darkened, the smile dropping like a mask. "You little liar," she hissed, but her voice was just loud enough for everyone to hear. And just like that, The first crack split through her polished facade. Savannah rose slowly from her chair, the train of her wine-colored dress sliding across the polished floor like a spill of dark wine. Her smile was gone now, replaced with a cold, sharp look that sent a chill down my spine. "You all seriously believe this," she said, voice cutting through the air like broken glass. "A random waiter and a grieving grandmother. This is nothing but a stunt to ruin my wedding." Murmurs rippled through the room. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. The weight of her social power filled the space. Savannah had always been the one with perfect posture, perfect speeches, perfect timing, but I refused to flinch. "This isn't a stunt," I said, stepping closer, note still in my hand like an exhibit in court. "This is an attempt on my grandson's life. I won't let it be swept under the rug." Her eyes narrowed. "Or maybe you're just trying to stay relevant, Zora. Maybe you can't stand that Malik is growing up without your control, that Marcus and I have built something new." The words landed like a slap, but I stood tall. For years, Savannah had tried to turn her polished social circle into a weapon, using whispers and charm to get what she wanted. But this time, the stakes weren't reputations. They were life and death. Keisha stood now too, her voice firm. "Enough games, Savannah. This isn't about Zora's pride. It's about a child who almost died tonight." A hush fell again, heavier than before. Savannah's hand trembled as she reached for her champagne glass, but she stopped halfway, realizing the move would only make her look guilty. "You people are unbelievable," she spat, but the edge of panic crept into her tone. For the first time, I saw it. The crack in her armor widening, and deep inside me, something shifted. The fear that had clutched me since I found that note melted into a steady, focused anger. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about making sure everyone in this room saw Savannah's mask fall, piece by piece. Savannah's mask slipped entirely now. The polite society smile was gone. Replaced by raw fury, she stepped closer, heels clicking like gunshots, until we were barely an arm's length apart. "You think you can embarrass me like this?" she hissed. "This is my night, my life. You've been a thorn in Marcus's side for years. You just couldn't stay in the shadows where you belong." The room bristled with tension. I could feel Malik's wide eyes on me from across the table, Keisha's protective hand gripping his shoulder. I didn't back away. "If you think scaring me will work, you don't know me at all," I said, my voice low and even. Her lips curled into a smile that wasn't a smile. "You won't be a problem much longer." For a split second, the room felt like it tilted. The threat was clear. Too clear. Marcus, still near the doorway, looked like he might bolt. "Mrs. Reed," he said softly, "she told me there was a plan. Something about making sure tonight went smoothly, no matter what." My stomach turned cold. This wasn't just about shrimp anymore. Before I could respond, a sudden crash came from the catering station. A tray of wine glasses hitting the floor. Guests screamed and jumped back. In the chaos, I caught Savannah's glance toward the service hallway. Quick, sharp, like a signal. I moved fast, pulling Keisha and Malik toward me. "We're leaving now," I said through clenched teeth. But as we passed near the side door, the faint, acrid smell hit me. Gas. The hair on my arms stood on end. Someone had opened a line, hoping a single spark would turn this into an inferno. "Out! Everyone out!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the panic. People scattered toward the exits, chairs toppling, music stopping mid-note. I didn't look back to see Savannah's face. I just held Malik tight and kept running. When we burst into the night air, my lungs burned with equal parts fear and rage. This wasn't over. The night air was sharp, but it cleared my head like a splash of ice water. We stood in the parking lot under the dim glow of sodium street lamps, guests scattering behind us, voices rising in confusion. Savannah hadn't followed. That was almost worse, because it meant she was somewhere inside, regrouping, calculating her next move. I turned to Keisha and Marcus, my jaw tight. This doesn't end here. If she's willing to risk everyone's life tonight, she's willing to do worse. Marcus swallowed hard and nodded. "There's more," he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "I heard her on the phone last week talking about MT. Said everything would be signed over by the end of the quarter. She called it Project Amaryllis." The name hit me like a spark. I knew it. It was the same code name that appeared on some of my late husband's estate files. Papers I hadn't dared touch since his death. Keisha caught my eye. "Then we dig," she said simply. That night, instead of going home, I drove to the old house in Encanto Palmcroft. The neighborhood was quiet. The kind of historic district where every porch light was warm and inviting, except ours, dark and hollow like a mausoleum. I let myself in with the spare key I swore I'd never use again. The house smelled faintly of dust and old wood polish. My steps echoed on the parquet floor as I made my way to the study. There it was, the locked file cabinet where my husband used to keep the just-in-case papers. My hands shook as I worked the key. Inside, neatly stacked, was a folder labeled Project Amaryllis. I spread the documents across the desk. Timelines, bank transfers, even invoices for mental capacity evaluations, clearly designed to paint me as unfit. And then I heard it, faint, through the walls, the soft, plaintive cry of a baby. I froze. Savannah's plot wasn't just about money. It was about rewriting the entire future of our family. By morning, my fear had calcified into focus. The folder from the study was still spread across my motel bed. A paper trail that led straight to one name, Mara Talbot. She wasn't just any attorney. She was a probate specialist known in Phoenix's Camelback Corridor for quietly resolving complex estates, usually in favor of whoever paid her the most. I knew then that Savannah wasn't smart enough to pull this off alone. She had help. I called DeShawn Carter, a private investigator I'd worked with years ago during a warehouse embezzlement case. "I need eyes on Mara Talbot fast," I told him. "Follow the money, and follow anyone she meets after dark." Within days, DeShawn sent me photos that made my stomach turn. Mara sitting in a corner booth at a high-end bistro, clinking glasses with a man I recognized, Dr. Weiss, a so-called capacity examiner who'd once tried to declare a neighbor incompetent so her kids could sell her house. There were others, too. A county probate clerk, a real estate broker. It was a whole web, and Savannah was just one shiny spider in it. I drove to the Camelback Corridor myself one evening, parking across from Mara's glass-walled office. Through the blinds, I watched her shake hands with a man in a tailored suit, exchange a thick envelope, and smile as if she'd just closed another perfect deal. "This is bigger than me," I whispered, gripping the steering wheel. When Mara finally left, I followed her to a private residence in Scottsdale. A sprawling home with iron gates and manicured hedges. My heart pounded as I jotted down the address. This wasn't random greed. It was a machine. And if I wanted to protect Malik, and whatever baby was crying in my old house, I had to take the whole machine apart, gear by gear. The next step was clear. I wasn't just a grandmother anymore. I was a witness, a survivor, and now, an investigator. The next lead came not from DeShawn's camera, but from a young nurse with haunted eyes. Her name was Kayla, and she worked part-time at Sonoran Fertility Institute, the same place that kept showing up on Mara's receipts. When I introduced myself, she hesitated. "I shouldn't be talking to you," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder as if the clinic's walls could hear. "I just want to know about the baby," I said, my voice soft but steady. "Please, whoever the mother was, she deserves to be remembered." Kayla's eyes brimmed with something between guilt and relief. She pulled a crumpled copy of a patient intake form from her pocket. Her name was Elena, 16, from Gallup, New Mexico. They called it a private surrogacy, said it was all legal. But she stayed here alone. No family visits, no school records requested. And after the delivery, she stopped, swallowed hard. After the delivery, what? "She died," Kayla said finally, her voice breaking. "They told me to mark it as sudden cardiac arrest, but she was healthy, too healthy for that." The words hit me like a punch. I saw Elena in my mind, barely more than a child herself, forced into a system that treated her life as a transaction. I thanked Kayla and left the clinic, my chest tight. Outside, the Arizona sun felt harsh, almost mocking. Back at the motel, I laid Elena's form next to the Project Amaryllis papers. The pattern was undeniable. Guardianship filings, estate transfers, and now, a dead teenage mother. This wasn't just about taking my money. It was about erasing people who got in their way. I stared at Malik's sleeping face that night and felt a surge of resolve. This baby wouldn't grow up without the truth, and Elena's name would not disappear into a file cabinet. By the end of the week, the trap was set, but not for them. It was for me. DeShawn slid a manila envelope across the diner table where we were meeting. Inside was a copy of the probate petition Marcus and Tiana had just filed. I read every line slowly, my stomach tightening. They were asking the court to declare me legally incapacitated, void my husband's will, and appoint Tiana as guardian over both my person and estate. The petition was polished, strategic, complete with doctored psych evaluations and affidavits from 2 doctors who'd never examined me. "They even have a motion to freeze your accounts," DeShawn said grimly. "If the judge signs off, you won't be able to buy a cup of coffee without their permission." I leaned back in the booth, my jaw set. "Then we don't wait for the judge," I said. "We fight back now." That night, I started building my own case. I pored over bank statements, looking for withdrawals and wire transfers that didn't match my signature. I traced the money trail from Marcus's account to Mara Talbot's shell corporations, and onto Sonoran Fertility. Every piece was a nail in their coffin. Keisha came over with a box of old photo albums and family documents. Together, we scanned everything. The wedding certificate, my husband's original will, even the letters he wrote me when he was sick. They were more than memories now. They were exhibits, I could feel the tide turning even as the danger sharpened. Marcus and Tiana thought they were days away from controlling everything I owned. But I was about to make sure the judge saw exactly who they were and what they had done. This wasn't just about protecting my name anymore. It was about making sure no one ever used the law as a weapon against another family like mine again. The breakthrough came late on a rainy Thursday night. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Kay." I met Kayla in the parking lot of a 24-hour grocery store, her hoodie pulled tight against the drizzle. She looked around nervously before speaking. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice shaking. I thought I could just follow orders, take my paycheck and forget. But after Elena, after what they told me to falsify... She handed me a flash drive, her hands trembling. Everything is on here. Patient logs, the medication schedule, even the fake psych reports Mara's office submitted. I copied them before the files disappeared. I gripped her hand. "You just changed everything." Kayla nodded, tears mixing with the rain. "I'll wear a wire if I have to. I can't stay silent and watch another girl die, or see them take your grandson's future." That night back at the motel, DeShawn helped me back up Kayla's files to 3 different cloud accounts and a burner drive. The evidence was no longer fragile. It was loaded, waiting. Then came the last piece. The letter. I wrote it by hand, my pen digging deep into the paper. "The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. You wanted me gone. Instead, I am watching. I will not hide, and I will not be silenced." I sealed it in an envelope with my old wax stamp, the one my husband used for company letters, and left it where I knew Marcus would find it. This wasn't just a warning. It was bait. If they thought I was still hiding, they would relax. But if they thought I was watching, they would move. And when they did, every camera Kayla had planted inside Sonoran and near Mara's office would be rolling. The storm was coming, and this time, I would be the one writing the ending. Monday morning, Biltmore District. The kind of morning when Phoenix's sky was too blue, too calm, as if it didn't know a storm was about to break. Inside Mara Talbot's sleek glass office, Marcus and Tiana sat across the mahogany table, smiling with the smug confidence of people who thought they'd already won. Mira was flipping through a stack of documents, my supposed incapacity filings, when the receptionist walked in, pale-faced. "There's someone here to see you," she stammered. Before anyone could answer, I stepped into the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Good morning," I said, setting my leather purse down deliberately on the table. "I heard there was a meeting about my estate. I figured you might want the guest of honor present." The room went dead silent. Marcus's smile collapsed first, replaced by a look halfway between shock and panic. Tiana froze, her manicured nails still pressed to her coffee cup. Mara, to her credit, stayed composed, but I saw the flicker in her eyes. "You," Marcus began, his voice hoarse. "You're supposed to be..." "Dead," I cut in, leaning forward slightly. "That's what the obituary said, wasn't it?" I pulled the letter from my purse and slid it across the table. "Read it. Out loud." Mara hesitated, then broke the seal. Her perfectly painted lips moved, voice calm but tight, reading every word of my warning letter. By the time she finished, the air in the room was heavy, the kind of silence that follows a gunshot. I smiled, slow, deliberate, and looked at each of them in turn. You tried to erase me, but I'm here, and I brought friends who know exactly what you've been doing." Kayla stepped in from the hallway then, her phone in hand, recording. Marcus's face turned crimson. Tiana's hand shook so hard she spilled coffee on the table. The first crack had appeared in their perfect mask, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. I didn't sit down. I stayed standing at the head of the table, forcing all three of them to look up at me. "You think this is still a game," I said quietly, opening the leather folder in my hands. "Let me show you the rules just changed." One by one, I laid out the photos DeShawn had taken. Marcus entering Sonoran fertility at night, Tiana handing over envelopes of cash in the parking lot, Mara signing off on probate petitions stamped urgent. "This," I said, tapping the last photo, "is fraud. And this," I slid the printed wire transfer records across the table, "is felony financial exploitation." Tiana's voice cracked first. "These pictures don't prove anything. You can't—" "Oh, they prove enough," I cut her off. "Enough to make any jury wonder why you were paying a fertility clinic under your maiden name. Enough to make a judge think twice before freezing my accounts." For a second, the room was still. Then Mara exhaled sharply, her calm mask slipping. "We need to end this," she said flatly, almost to herself. Then, without breaking eye contact, she pulled out her phone and dialed. "Get it done," she said into the receiver. "Tonight." That was all I needed. I gathered my evidence slowly, letting them think they had regained control. "Thank you for confirming exactly what I needed to hear," I said, slipping the last photo back into my folder. "You haven't won anything," Marcus spat. I smiled faintly. "I don't need to win today. I just needed to watch you sweat." And with that, I walked out, leaving behind the smell of spilled coffee and panic. Outside, the desert air hit my face like a slap. DeShawn was waiting by the car, engine running. "They took the bait?" he asked. "Oh, they bit hard," I said, sliding into the passenger seat. "Tonight, they'll try to clean this up, and we'll be there, recording every second." That night, Phoenix was unnervingly quiet, the kind of silence that makes you hear your own pulse. DeShawn pulled up outside the Encanto house, with 2 unmarked SUVs right behind him. "Feds are ready," he said, his tone clipped. Inside, the living room was a war room. Maps of the house, timestamps, and Kayla's wire recordings were spread across the coffee table. Rosa was calming baby August in the corner, while Nate was checking the feed from the micro cameras Kayla had planted earlier that week. "We go live as soon as they make their move," DeShawn said, handing me an earpiece. I nodded, my palms cold but steady. "Get Rosa and the baby downstairs. Kayla, you stay with them. Lock the door and don't open it for anyone but me or Nate." Once everyone was secure, I stepped outside into the warm desert night, breathing in the smell of creosote and dust. My plan was simple, but dangerous. Make Marcus and Tiana believe they still had the upper hand, just long enough to incriminate themselves. At 9:17 p.m., their SUV rolled up, headlights cutting across the driveway. Marcus got out first, Tiana behind him, both wearing grim expressions. Mara's Lexus wasn't far behind. I stood on the porch, arms crossed. "You wanted to talk? Let's talk." Inside, we sat in the same room where I used to read bedtime stories to Leo. Now it was the stage for the final act. "I know why you're here," I said, leaning back in my chair. "But if you think you're leaving tonight with my life's work, you're wrong." Mara smirked. "Then maybe we leave with something else." That was their mistake. The words, the tone, all of it was being recorded in high definition. I kept them talking, baiting them into revealing more, every phrase sealing their fate. And when Marcus finally blurted out, "We should have finished you at the lake," I knew we had them. I glanced toward the hallway camera and gave the smallest nod. It was almost time to end this. The room had gone so quiet. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Marcus's last words still hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Mara leaned back in her chair, a strange smile curling her lips. "You know," she said, almost conversationally, "I've done this 33 times. 33 estates restructured, families who never saw it coming, judges in my pocket, doctors signing whatever I put in front of them. You were supposed to be number 34. Her arrogance was my signal. From outside, a voice boomed, "Federal agents! Don't move!" In an instant, the front door flew open and agents in tactical gear flooded the living room, their badges catching the lamplight. Mara's confident smile vanished as 2 agents twisted her arms behind her back and clicked the cuffs. Marcus bolted for the kitchen, but didn't make it 2 steps before another agent tackled him. Tiana collapsed into the corner, hands on her head, sobbing that she didn't mean it. I stayed seated, calm, my hands folded in my lap, as if I had been waiting for this exact moment. "You got all of that?" I asked, glancing toward the hidden camera in the bookshelf. DeShawn appeared in the doorway, nodding. "Every word. Nice work, Ms. Reed." I stood slowly, looking at Mara as they led her out. "You almost made me believe I was powerless," I said softly, "but you forgot one thing. I built this family from nothing, and I don't break that easily." Outside, the night air felt lighter, almost sweet. The blue and red flashes from the FBI SUVs painted the Encanto street like a strange, triumphant mural. For the first time since that night on the lake, my heart felt steady. The danger was over. I walked back inside, past the overturned coffee table and the trail of muddy boot prints, and headed straight for the basement. When I opened the door, Rosa was there with baby August, Nate standing guard. "It's done," I whispered, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself cry. Not from fear, but from relief. The morning after the arrests, the neighborhood felt eerily calm, as if the desert itself was exhaling. The Encanto house was still taped off, federal vehicles parked along the curb like sentinels. I stood on the porch with a cup of black coffee, watching the sunrise break across the Phoenix sky. The first one in weeks that didn't feel heavy. By noon, the news was everywhere. Multi-state probate fraud ring taken down. The headlines screamed. The local channels ran clips of agents hauling boxes of files out of Mara's office, and reporters camped outside the courthouse as indictments were unsealed. Arizona wasn't the only state touched by this storm. New Mexico and Nevada joined the investigation, tracing similar accidental deaths and probate fast tracks linked to Mara's network. The list of names grew by the hour. A doctor from Scottsdale, a probate judge from Maricopa County, 2 bank officers who approved suspicious wire transfers. Neighbors stopped by throughout the day, some with casseroles, others just to squeeze my hand. "You did the right thing, Ms. Reed," Mr. Alvarez said, his voice full of quiet respect. Inside, federal agents carefully cataloged the remaining evidence. I handed over the leather folder with DeShawn's photos, the wire receipts, and Kayla's recordings. Every page, every frame now carried weight in a courtroom. That night, the house was quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioner. Rosa sat with me at the kitchen table, sipping tea. "It's over, Zora," she said softly. I nodded, but I knew it wasn't just over. It was only beginning. Justice had taken its first step, and the ripple effect was about to reach every corner of the Southwest. For the first time, I let myself hope that Maria's memory and the future of every other family they targeted might finally rest in peace. The courtroom was packed on sentencing day, the air so tense you could almost taste it. Reporters filled the back row, their cameras ready to capture every second. I sat in the front with Nate and Rosa on either side, Kayla just behind me, her hands clasped tightly together. Marcus was brought in first, his once perfect hair now disheveled, his expression a mix of anger and hollow resignation. Tiana followed, eyes swollen from crying, clinging to the rail as if it might save her. Mira entered last, dressed sharply even in her orange jumpsuit, her jaw set as though defiance could rewrite the facts. When the judge read the sentences, the room went silent. Marcus read, 25 years in state prison, no possibility of parole for 15. Tiana Lopez, 20 years in state prison. And Mara Talbot, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Each word landed like a gavel striking my chest, not with pain this time, but with release. Kayla was called to the stand briefly, her testimony about falsified medical orders sealing the case. The judge commended her bravery and recommended federal whistleblower protection. Tears streaked her face, but this time they were tears of relief. Outside the courthouse, microphones and cameras swarmed, but I kept my head high. "This isn't just about me," I told them. "It's about every elder, every mother, every child who was nearly erased for money today." They were heard. That night, we returned to the Encanto house. I lit a single white candle on the kitchen counter, not for grief, but for gratitude. Justice, though delayed, had finally arrived. 2 weeks after the sentencing, I stood in the family court in downtown Phoenix, my palms sweating despite the chill of the air conditioner. The room was small, almost intimate. Just me, Rosa, Nate, and baby August in his carrier, clutching his stuffed bear. The judge looked at me over her glasses. "Mrs. Reed, are you prepared to take full guardianship and legal adoption of this child?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, my voice steady, even as my heart pounded. "I am prepared to raise him as my own grandson and tell him the truth about where he came from, and about the courage it took to protect him." She smiled softly, stamped the papers, and said the words I had been waiting for. "From this day forward, he is legally August Maya Reed." I bent down and whispered to him, "August, this is your beginning. Maya is for the mother who gave you life. We'll make sure she's never forgotten." Walking out of the courthouse, the desert sun felt less harsh, almost warm. Rosa squeezed my hand. "He's home now," she said quietly. That evening, we held a small dinner at the Encanto house. No champagne, no cameras, just the people who had fought beside me. Nate grilled steaks in the backyard, and Rosa baked cornbread. I placed August in his high chair for the first time and watched him smile as Kayla dangled a spoon in front of him. Looking around the table, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Completeness. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was rebuilding. August had given us all a reason to hope again. When I tucked him in that night, I kissed his forehead and whispered, "You are the proof that love is stronger than greed. We're going to do this right, together." 5 years later, the Encanto house had been completely restored, not just with fresh paint and new furniture, but with laughter. The desert mornings no longer felt lonely. August, now 5, ran across the yard chasing the same red ball that once sat in my garage gathering dust. His giggles floated through the air like music, and every sunrise reminded me why I kept fighting. That year, we launched the Maya Foundation, named in honor of August's mother. Its mission: protect seniors from financial exploitation and give shelter to young mothers in crisis. What began as a small neighborhood effort had grown into a network of legal clinics, hotlines, and safe houses across Arizona and New Mexico. At the opening ceremony, I stood behind the podium, looking at the crowd of families, lawyers, nurses, and community workers. 5 years ago, I almost stayed silent. I said, my voice steady. But silence is where injustice thrives. Today, we are living proof that courage can change a family, and sometimes even a system. As the applause swelled, I felt tears in my eyes, not of grief, but of gratitude. I realized the story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told to stay quiet for the sake of peace. And now, I want to ask you, if it were your family, would you have had the courage to speak up, even if it meant shattering everything you knew? If this story touched you, if it made you think about what justice and family really mean, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so more people can hear it. Every share is another voice saying that protecting the vulnerable matters. Because in the end, family isn't just about blood. It's about who you choose to fight for.